Hello, everyone, and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming new moon in the sign of Pisces taking place on the 10th of March 2024. This new moon takes place at around 20 degrees and 17 minutes of the sign of Pisces. So, one of its main aspects is that it holds a pretty strong, a pretty tight sextile with Uranus. So there is immediately an element of surprise attached to it. But this can go quite well hand in hand with the symbolism of Pisces, because Pisces represents the collective and, of course, individual, unconscious, everything that is hidden. Not necessarily in a scorpionic way, where there is an intent of hiding something. There is a secret keeping um, energy, if that makes sense, attached to it. Pisces is more like it is simply not seen. It is simply undiscovered or unretrieved information or secret in that sense. And of course, in a bigger way, Pisces is the divine mystery. It is the secret of the creator. It is the ether, the fog, the mist that covers basically everything. But at the same time, it is also the building block of everything. Pisces is the dream. Pisces is the sacred fantasy. And with sextile, with Uranus, well, that fantasy, that dream, whatever is lurking in the realm of the unknown, can very quickly, in a sudden, in an instant, in a flash of an eye, come into existence or reveal itself. That is very specific to Uranus. Revelations, epiphanies, awareness. When an accident happens, and Uranus is one of those planets which is very commonly linked to accidents, because it is very, very electric, it is magnetic, it is basically the flow of quantum energy. But anyway, it is not necessarily that Uranus causes the accident in that sense. Uranus basically raises awareness about what led to the accident, because nothing is without cause. Everything that takes place, any action, any event, does need to have some kind of causes. And if those causes are unknown in the unconscious, then Uranus simply retrieves that. It makes it visible, it gives awareness, long story short. So Uranus really, really likes to do that. And since this is a sextile, that means that it is a blessing, but it does need something from us. Sometimes that is sheerly just an intent, and something happens, something builds on that. Usually something positive, because a sextile, this is where if we dream something, if we, how should I say, if we dive deep into our most sacred realms, our own personal dimension, and retrieve a desire, a dream, a goal, a want, something from there, well, that is usually meant to be aimed to be positive. Now, of course, a sextile can be used for any purpose. So, this is the dual nature of Pisces. If that is a fear, if that is something that deeply troubles us, focusing that much more on it can Uranus very quickly, suddenly, spontaneously pull it forward. So yes, there is this side to this energy as well, but that is always very specific to Pisces. It can go either way. So it will rather go the way where our frequency, our inner programming, if that makes sense, runs in towards which direction. So this is the most classic example positive and negative, the polarities, optimism and pessimism. Whenever there is something powerful in Pisces, that usually, besides its, typical manifestation, how we perceive it or how it, is received by us, in which manner, really depends on our inner setup. So hence why it is always, under a choice, really. Maybe what we get, the end result, is not much of the choice, because Pisces is a very karmic sign, however, but what is a choice, how we embrace it, how we integrate it, how we contribute to the effect that it will have on us. So this will matter very, very much, because another aspect that this new moon holds is a minor one, perhaps an insignificant psychological aspect, a semi-sextile. So have the sextile, it holds with Mars. As you see, the new moon is at 20 degree of Pisces. Mars is at 20 degree of the next neighboring sign, Aquarius. So that forms the semi-sextile. A semi-sextile is usually when we have to simply accept a reality, regardless of how uncomfortable it is, and still carry on with another one. The best possible example for this is the likeliness of how this new moon will play out. Well, Pisces, the magic, the art, the altered state of consciousness, the surreal, etc., etc., or timelines melt into one, or something not very linear, but anyway, it gives an altered state, or it gives something much more of the domain of fantasy. Uh, while Mars in the sign of Aquarius, it is about the now, it is future oriented, it is about the community, about basically humanitarianism, and this matters very, very, very much in the present moment, when there is a massive humanitarian crisis on the planet. So you can imagine how Mars's attention, Mars's focus, energy is really diverted towards that. Even our very own, partially, because we are part of the human collective, as simple as that. So these two energies don't have anything really in common. However, they still have to coexist, the semi-sextile. So the magic, the higher meaning of your life, or something comes up from a previous existence. You're using your creation energies in a more alchemical or esoteric or spiritual way, or you're creating art, or something really, really triggers the realm of your unconscious, dreams, or anything. It's possible, especially with Uranus in the picture. And then at the same time, the world is suffering, let's say. And these two have to coexist. These two have to be okay with one another. And usually they're not. Because you can imagine Mars in Aquarius, especially what is happening out there in the world. Well, that is a stress factor. That actually goes against magic and fantasy and mystery and even the creative power of this Piscean energy, because it would trigger actually the compassionate side of Pisces, where we share the pain, where we mourn together, the spirit of communion. But the theme does not encourage that. The theme actually encourages the other side of Pisces, the magic, the fantasy, the escapism, the altered state of consciousness. So you can imagine how uncomfortable this energy is going to get. Now, to make this a tiny little bit worse, at the time of this new moon, Mars holds quite a tight square, so a conversation of tension, something truly stressful, irritating, or which appears as urgent. And Uranus is um, the ruling planet of Aquarius, so this is where it's that much more serious. This square can represent, besides political and economic instability, Taurus, it can represent rebellion, revolution in the and this time, I'm afraid, in quite a literal sense, movements within a country, within an organization, even a community, where those moves challenge leadership or affirm equality, fraternity, freedom. The key signature phrases for Aquarius. And this is the ruler. Mars is the activator. Mars, especially in a square, is the irritant. No, Mars is the match which sets the fuel, gasoline, or anything on fire, the spark. And Uranus is, chaos, instability. My previous example at the beginning, because Uranus brings the awareness, well, exactly all the factors that would ignite the combustible elements here. So, and there is going to be massive informational barrage overflow about the events. Now, how should I name it not to get in trouble? I'm gonna give the keywords. Mars, warrior, soldier, right? And also fire. A soldier who, out of a sign of protest, self-immolated. So that gesture will have a very powerful reverberation at the time of that new moon because of this Mars and Uranus square, which, okay, it's waning, but it's still very tight. So there is going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of disruption on the internet or over the internet. Informational barrage. Why? Uranus is awareness. It wants to raise awareness by chaos. But chances are there can be some kind of technological malfunctions or disasters or anything related to technology which kind of goes wrong or which causes, like missiles and bombs and stuff like that, damage. And this this period is gonna feel like a vengeful. This is a short lasting energy, a few days, but it is gonna feel like a vengeful Mercury retrograde period. Even though Mercury itself just ingressed at the time of this new moon into the sign of Aries. And in the sign of Aries, well, it is not very comfortable, but it can operate. It is more comfortable than in Pisces, let's say like that. But it is quick, it is very fiery, it has a temper. So quick words, tumultuous and very initiatory communication. So we can already see the symbolism playing out. But Uranus is the disruptor. Okay, it doesn't converse with Mercury, even though this can very well be a semi-square. I'm not gonna get into this detail. However, the square with Mars is enough. And especially that Uranus is Mercury's higher octave. So it, in its own unique way, Uranus influences communication as well, especially the futuristic type of communication. So internet and anything that has to do with it. online presence, data storages, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. So there is going to be chaos, there is going to be disruption, and whatever is, affecting the world stage in the present moment, it's going to play out very intensely. It's going to have a peak moment. But besides this, there can be some kind of economic problem. Venus is also in the sign of Aquarius at this moment, economic, hence Venus, and she is almost an erratic Aquarius. So the big problems, the unmet needs of the collective, Venus, that is what Venus says here. And of course, technology, the unfairness of it, unfairness in pricing, unfairness of availability, unfairness of who has access to it, or unfairness is who is affected by it. So there is going to be a lot of debate and an economic up and down as well, economic chaos, and which can go, of course, either way. Something almost permanent drops in value, something else which is way too new, so to speak, out of the blue, out of nowhere, suddenly it climbs in value. So this is quite a powerful period. But anyway, this is how the semi-sextile operates. There is this huge chaos and discomfort and cry out for justice and help, etc. in the world, especially. I must please allow me to show this to you. Ceres is the dwarf planet responsible for nourishment, sometimes food, Capricorn, the distribution of food, the management of food. Conjunct Pholus, a centaur asteroid, which represents the power of curiosity. Pholus had a not so favorable fate due to his curiosity in myth. And planetoid Quaoar. Quaoar is the power of sound, even in a quantum perspective. But in Capricorn, the voice of something. So Ceres conjunct these two other astrological elements. This is where there is going to be strong voices, even within centralized power Capricorn, to solve famine, as in a food crisis. So this gives a lot of hope. Now, speaking about hope, well, Pisces is, at least a part of Pisces is about hope and the energy of hope, the power of hope, the manifestation of hope. And with sextiling Uranus, Uranus in itself is a very hopeful energy because the future is built on hope, isn't it? And new technology. When you start researching new technology, even before it exists, even on design level, it's only a hope, right? So this is a very hopeful energy. That is a very, as I said, magical energy, deeply psychological energy, where it's so good for, besides manifesting our dreams, because that is pretty obvious, it is really good for release and healing and a kind of purge, but a purge that we have to trigger ourselves. Why? Because any new moon, especially when it's in this deeply psychological part of the sky, Pisces, is good to eliminate things and energies that we people even cord cutting, Pisces, karma. This is where past relationship karma is many times under in the realm of Pisces. So all of this is really, really good to send it into the darkness, into the void of the moon, the abyss, so to speak, the unconscious, to forget it. and cause even the divine to forget it, because that is the abyss, there where the divine does not want to look. Hence, symbolically, a forgetting, you know? That's why the abyss can never really come to the surface into light, because light is awareness, light is when the divine is looking at it. And that is also why within the abyss there is a certain kind of freedom to not exist, because it is not under any and the influence of any watcher, if that makes sense. So this is why this abyssal energy is really, really good to eliminate things, energies, patterns, even from our unconscious, from our lives, from our minds. Why not? That no longer serve us, but this is initiated by the self. Sextile with you. This doesn't necessarily come on its own. It is a tool that is given to us, which we may use the way we think it's best. Because this energy is based on really our own wisdom. Wisdom provided by Jupiter and Saturn sextile. And if you look at the image, Jupiter and Saturn are actually both of them in the vicinity of these other planets, the Saturn, the new moon, and Jupiter, Uranus. So this new moon is one that ultimately also starts building. It is like the very first gateway to the upcoming Jupiter and Uranus conjunction on the 20th of April. So yeah, but anyway, this energy, besides the self-triggered purge, let's call it like that, is really, really good for attracting things into our lives, energies, people, values, and even money, because the economic instability that is triggered by the Mars, the past Venus Uranus square, and now the Mars Uranus square, Uranus in Taurus. So it's really, really about the financial sector as well. That economic chaos can mean chances, opportunities normally non existing for certain people. An investment where you truly have to give something minimal and gain a lot. That's where it can be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Exactly the specifics of Pisces and Taurus, dream coming true. Like, let me give you an example. You simply cannot afford a fancier car or a higher tech car. That is outside of question. And this energy shakes up the world, community, people around you, and an acquaintance, a neighbor, a friend will sell you their car for less than 50% because they need the money that urgently, and the situation is such nature that they can only trust you due to your notoriety as a human being. Everyone knows that you're honest, etc., etc. Something which previously was impossible, out of your reach, all of a sudden, due to chaos, a chaos that ultimately is beneficial to both parties, even though that neighbor would lose. But maybe that loss is a karmic purge loss, Pisces, which prevents them from, I don't know, Pisces again, hospital, prison, any confinement, Pisces. So you see how this quantum energy can make the impossible possible. And this opportunistic factor, because it does need, how should I say, a stance of opportunism. which opportunism which is granted by the North Node in the sign of Aries. And the true North Node is almost at midpoint, very significant and powerful, because that is where usually the opportunities lie. But this has to go hand in hand with the suffering and pain of the world. And North Node still conjunct Chiron, feeling guilty that we are blessed while other souls out there are doomed. But this is where we also get to the Sabian symbol of this new moon in the sign of Pisces. But before I get there, sorry, I would just like to mention that this new moon is also conjunct Neptune, the ruler of Pisces. Ruler of Pisces, which also holds an outer sign conjunction with Mercury. So you see how this is also very strong Neptunian energy. So it means that, whatever we are bombarded as communication information, this economic factor that becomes aware to all of us, Uranus awareness, a part of that is illusion. Neptune, psychological manipulation, and mass. Conjunct Mercury, outer sign, outer sign conjunction, meaning that Mercury is in Aries. It triggers our survival. Communication designed, meant to trigger our survival mentality on purpose. We must be very, very, very aware of this, because Neptune in the energetic, the late degrees of Pisces, besides the spirit and the art and compassion and communion and um, aid, humanitarian aid, is also manipulation. It is also lies, deception, the tools of mind control. Why not? So we must be very, very careful not to believe everything that we are going to be bombarded with at this time, because that is one expression of this new moon. It can alter the reality of a lot of people, those who get triggered to go immediately on survival mode, survival mentality, because of the news of imminent economic collapse or imminent war or imminent something. This is where we cannot believe everything, because this Mars in Aquarius, internet, right? Mars warrior, cyber warfare, informational warfare, mediatic warfare, and ultimately psychological warfare. So we must not allow this new moon to play out in that sense. So we must remember that this conjunction with Neptune is quite significant, even in the bad sense, but of course, even in a good sense, because prayer, outer sign conjunction, Mercury in Aries, I want, I will, and 0 degrees of Aries as a world stage. So it's also out there. The power of prayer, the power of words, the power of the mind over matter. And then Neptune invested in a good purpose, manifesting like world peace, using the power of manifestation, of dreams, of fantasy, of alchemy to project peace or harmony or a solution to the problems for external reality. This is one way that this Pisces new moon can be used, because Pisces is the spirit of communion, remember? And I would definitely urge anyone to do this besides anything personal, because the world needs it so very much right now. And all of us need it, even if we are not affected at all. As a species, we share the same karma. So you can imagine our children, children of children, etc., etc., will pay for any transgression that takes place in the present moment. So we must use our powers to, how should I say, cast peace, cast divine aid, or to I don't necessarily want to say program, but instigate the divine intelligence to come and solve problems in any way, shape, and form, even out of sheer chaos, to consecrate chaos, Uranus. And we must not forget that Uranus is the sky god, etc., etc. So everything celestial is, in a way, I don't necessarily want to say ruled, but influenced, co-influenced by Uranus as well. You know what I mean? So let us do that at this moment, because it is the sky and reality itself is very, very reactive to our thoughts and emotions and basically our spirit. But the other thing is that the new moon is sandwiched between Neptune and Saturn. So this is a very strong emphasis on the sign of Pisces. We must not, Venus is up closing. Very soon she will be there as well. And the ruler is there, Neptune. And this is where Neptune is the two, this configuration is highlighting the dual nature of Pisces, where Neptune is everything is possible, believe freely in everything, everything flows. Saturn, the malefic, ultimately is the opposite. Not all is possible, or it asks us to restrict our own fantasies. It asks us to get a very down to earth, realistic approach, even in matters which are not susceptible to this. Faith, spirituality, spirit, higher knowledge, our own very subjective inner components. Well, how are they susceptible to reality when there isn't an external reality or criteria? It is all up to us. So you see how there is this strong duality in the sky, the two expressions of the spirit. And this is where it leads us to the Sabian symbol. Under the watchful eye of a Chinese servant, a girl cuddles and plays with a little white lamb. Now, you may say, how weird is this? But actually, it's not as weird as possible. The old Chinese servant is, without a shadow of a doubt, a symbol, a metaphor for the wisdom, the ancient wisdom of Pisces, the realm of Pisces, the divine, and how that ancient wisdom has very, very strong moral compasses that usually lead to harmony, lead to balance, lead to evolution and peace. And Chinese, you can imagine that the Chinese culture is one of the most impacting ancient cultures, ancient civilizations, along with their wisdom, methodology, philosophy, worldview, art, religion, and everything included here. So, and the fact that the servant, well, you can imagine that ancient wisdom is meant to serve the future, especially. A girl, that is our own innocence and creational energy. But the creation, new moon, the creational energy before it is ripe and fertile, and then fondles, cuddles, etc. A little white lamb. The lamb is without a doubt the symbol of Christ, the spirit of compassion, the innocence, innocent victims, correlation, the correlation here. Um, and the gesture of playing with the lamb, comforting it, cuddling it, taking care of it, she is being trained to become a parent, a mother herself at an early age, in a harmonious way, in a Piscean way, a simulation, a fantasy which is only half fantasy, because for the lamb, the little girl's gestures are very real and it does the job. For the lamb, the little girl is actually the parent, and even for the girl in the fantasy, in her fantasy world, the little lamb is her child, let's say. So you can imagine that this almost says everything about Pisces and our own unconscious. How we train it, what moral compasses, what information, the Chinese servant, the ancient wisdom, or any kind of wisdom, any kind of thing that we inherited from our cultures, parents, or on our own accord, whatever, our guiding morals and principles that seem wise to us personally, how those train who we become or whoever we are in the present moment. That's not a coincidence, because we had powerful training one way or another. So you see that planting a seed of intention with great wisdom and benevolence can ensure the most efficient or most divinely perfect manifestation, where divinely perfect means that it's beyond our understanding of what perfect means. Uranus, it is Uranian. So this symbol is so important. Now with Uranus, of course, we will see new discoveries, new technology, new, basically, also archaeological finds, maybe certain information that changes history, discoveries, why? Because Pisces is what is buried deep within the earth. And also Pisces is fossil fuel. So something that has to do with fossil fuel as well, or fossils. Saturn is in Pisces too. So that's also the hard fossils, bones, archaeological reminiscence of some ancient culture. Why not? So this energy is very surprising either way that we look at it. But going back to the Sabian symbol, how we train our unconscious is what we will ultimately get. Because in this sense, not even chaos Uranus is all that coincidental, because the outcome is definitely random, hazard, a coincidence, but then what that chaos, the effect that chaos produces, well, that might, in a quantum way even, align to our intent, align to our frequency. If we operate with love, the Sabian symbol, nurture, care, cuddles, affection, simulating being good creators ourselves, simulating the fact that we're also divine parents to things in our lives, to our own selves, to the ether in our lives and minds, etc. Simulating that we are divine, not in an arrogant and in a Luciferian way that we are gods ourselves. No, not in that way. In a rather humble way, just playing a game that we are responsible creators. That intent, that frequency, everything that it incorporates, that makes sure that whatever chaos births is beyond our wildest imagination and is benevolent towards us. Benevolence births benevolence. Malevolence usually births malevolence. So this is what the Sabian symbol is really hinting at. Whatever we create will really match the frequency and our deepest emotions. And if we want to create something truly useful, we need to deep into our greatest honesty with the self, because Uranus is that honesty. Another honesty, Mercury sextiles Pluto. If that's not like raw honesty, because Mercury is the information, the truth. Aries is the head and the impulse. And Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, well, of course, that is the hard to look at information that comes out. So I know this is a sextile and it's a positive aspect, but be careful how you express truth, how you express whatever you want to communicate. Because impulsive speech or in violence or, in the heat of the moment can cause problems. Mars square Uranus at this. So even though it's a sextile, again, we must use it with, we must use our words and expressing our truth with great caution. But ultimately, it's a truth aspect. So being very true with ourselves makes sure that the manifestation or what we get out of this new moon is equally as truthful. Uh, because what doesn't work here is when we want something, we wish something because we know it's for the better, but our inner being, our innermost self, wishes the opposite. For example, an unhealed trauma. You wish for love, but your inner being does not want to be, cannot receive affection. So you can imagine it's already a dichotomy. But if you know that you have that problem and that trauma, well, immediately that truth sets you free because you can wish for love in a healthy way, in the measure that you can process it, or in the best timing, Saturn time. So, self knowledge and being honest with ourselves is really the magical factor, the key to success at this new moon in Pisces. So, again, whatever it is that you wish, desire for yourself, let us please make a wish for the collective, for all of humanity, for peace, and to help to come to the most helpless individuals. So, thank you so very much for listening. Wishing everyone a truly magical and alchemical new moon. And until next time, bye for now.